All right, everybody. So I'm here with Shane Provost.
And I'm here with Brad Didon.
Oh, thanks for the introduction,
Yeah,
Shane.
you're welcome.
So, hey, look, this is our first podcast. We have no idea what we're doing, but we were texting back and forth the other day in the car and said, hey, let's get a podcast going. Let's call it Intentionally Positive Podcast. I think that was the name, right, Shane?
Yeah, it was like 3 ideas or so.
Yeah,
4 ideas.
something like that. So we don't even know if that's going to be the name, but that's kind of the basis of what we're going off of so far.
Exactly, yeah.
And basically what it all boils down to is I think I came up with a tagline of putting a positive spin on a negative world, right? So a lot of the topics that we want to discuss in this podcast is, how do we take something in everyday life and turn it into something positive? Because there's just so much negativity in today,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And so, how do we get people to look at things positively? I know, my life journey has had its ups and downs. I'm sure yours as well, Shane. And so, Shane and I were kind of introduced to each other, I guess, a year, 2 years? How long has it been, Shane?
It's almost been 2 years.
Almost 2 years, right?
It's probably been 2 years. When I got my job here, you were actually the one that interviewed me.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, the big thing with Shane joining us at where we work is he was super positive. And it was like, how in the world can this guy be so positive? And so anyway...
And they still think I'm full of crap.
To a degree. But yeah, to Shane's point, I think a lot of us have learned a lot of different things from Shane, him just being so super positive. And so, I'm like, well, how can we take this positive stuff that, outlook of, how Shane looks at the world and, how I look at the world from more of an intentional standpoint and apply that to a podcast and just let everybody listen and kind of, see, our journey throughout this process of, how to become more positive, how to look at things from a more positive angle, and just really rid yourself of the negativity. Because let's be honest with each other. It's the negative aspect of everything that just drags us down, that creates all this depression and all the stuff I don't even really want to get into, because it begins to pull you down when you begin to talk about it. So,
Yeah.
So I don't know. We're just going to kind of talk and see if you guys like it. I'm sure this format will change over time. But any feedback or anything that anybody wants to provide for us as far as topics that they want to talk about, please do. We'll go through like YouTube videos that we're watching, products that we use. But basically it's just Shane and I's journey of getting to know each other. Him, kind of coaching me on more, positive outlooks, and kind of me coaching him on, more intentional execution. Follow
exactly.
through. Yeah, so Shane, you want to jump in and just give a little bit of an introduction about yourself? I mean, that was kind of an introduction of overall
Sure.
what we're going to be doing with each other, but, just an introduction of yourself, and then I'll go through one of mine.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm Shane Provost, and the positive guy that Brad was talking about. I don't necessarily like try to be positive. I think I've always kind of had that disposition. But it's interesting. It's like when I hear Brad talking, you hear the word positive and trying to be positive, and it to me, it's like even still, funnily enough, it kind of makes me cringe a little bit, because I start thinking Stuart Smalley, like, darn it, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and just people like me. It's like that's not how I consider myself. I've just noticed that when I'm focusing on things that are negative, even like, not, I don't think anyone goes out there and like, what can I find that's negative out there to really think about today? So I would spend my days, I'd wake up, I'd make my breakfast, but I'd look at the news, and it got to the point where it was almost like there was an expectation. It's like, okay, where did the terrorist attack happen in the world? Can I guess how many people died, or were slaughtered, or how many children were stripped away from it. It's just an awful mindset to be in. And man, then I'd get in a routine where I'd be, in the evenings, I'd jump on my phone and, I'm just trying to stay in touch with what the world's doing, right? I'd look at Twitter, and it's just like people just complaining about how awful things are, or like, here's this crappy thing that happened, and look how arrogant this guy, it just keeps going on. And I got to this point, probably a few years ago, it especially hit, where I started diving into more of this understanding, like the mind and, what is happiness. And I came across Tony Robbins' video. A lot of people I know are the same way. Like, Tony Robbins is like kind of like the gateway into so much of this, positive mentality stuff. But I really appreciated it. It really resonated with me, and what he basically opened my eyes to is how our mentalities, I mean, even without us thinking about it, influence everything around us, from like how we perceive the taste of our cereal in the morning to how we perceive our job is going. It influences the opportunities we notice. It influences the money in our bank account. It influences the kinds of friends that we have. I mean, it's just kind of everything. So I just started diving in more and more and more, and trying to understand that, like, the ultimate goal, right, I think for everyone is happiness, right? And there are ways to get there that work, and there are ways that don't work. Ways that don't work is thinking in a negative way, which is very much baked into us by habit from the time we're in the cradle. I mean, it's just always around us. Like, our parents complain. They talk about how hot it feels in the house. They talk about how rainy it is. Like, blah blah blah. I mean, it's just one thing after another. People that are important to us, our friends, things that we watch on TV, musicians that we follow on a regular basis, the TV shows, the movies. I mean, it's just kind of everything. Those negative outlooks just kind of bakes into your psyche, right? So what I found is that, like, you really have to be on guard about what it is that goes in your brain, right? It's like, if you I came to the realization through listening to like Napoleon Hill, Earl Nightingale, among other people, Tony Robbins, like I said before. If your mind is like a field, right? Your mind is like a field. And a field, just like any number of fields, I mean, you just pass by on the road. The soil will accept any seed that you give to it, right? It doesn't matter if it's corn. It doesn't matter if it's something like nightshade, which is a deadly poison, or even just weeds, right? Whatever you plant in the ground is going to grow, and it's going to become what it's going to become. So I started realizing that if those seeds that we have, which are our thoughts, are being, kind of sown inside of our minds, it's extremely necessary to understand, what is it that I'm allowing into my awareness, what I got to the point where I came to believe that the more positive I am, the higher the quality of my thoughts, the higher quality my overall life will end up being. And the rationale behind that is, if our behaviors, right, are ultimately influenced by our thinking, right? I mean, we don't do anything without there being a thought first.
So Shane, let's dive into that a little bit. And this is kind of where, like, from an intentional standpoint, kind of how I see things, right? And it's, how do we do those sorts of things? Like, for instance,
Sure,
let's talk about, like, how, like, you and I do that in our day-to-day life, right? So the way that I look at how I do it is, I'm trying to kill cable, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to get away from the wire. Like, I don't even think that you have cable. Like,
Yeah.
So what do you have, like a Roku or Apple TV?
We have Netflix, and I just use it, cast it to my TV with Chromecast.
Yeah, so I mean, think a lot of how this like negativity comes to us, right? A lot of this negativity comes through the 24-hour news cycle and all this, kind of stuff that we deal with, So, if you really think about the intentional side of things, you can intentionally cut the cord, if you will, which will definitely help with, getting all that negativity out of your life. The reality of it is if you do that, think about it. Okay, I'm paying $150 a month for my cable bill, okay? If I was to cut that, that's $150, right? I mean, that's like $1,200 something bucks, $1,400 something bucks a year.
I mean, law of cause and effect, it's amazing. Making a decision like that has immediate financial benefits.
So it's not only, hey, like, I need to get this negativity out of my life. Here is one thing that's contributing to that negativity, right? I probably need, some kind of noise in the background. I want something going while, I'm cooking dinner, or I'm cleaning the house, or I want to stay up to current events, or I want to be able to talk at the water cooler, or whatever it may be. But the reality of it is what is the cost, right? The cost of that is financial. I mean, we're talking like, upwards of like $1,200 a year. And then also from a positivity standpoint, like just thinking about all this negativity in the world, but who needs that? Yeah. So immediately you can turn around and see, financial benefits and benefits from, just like a sanity check, in your head.
Well,
so
the thing that's interesting though is it's not just getting rid of your cable, right? It's getting rid of a habit. We get in these patterns in our life. Like, tell someone, try to tell someone like the music they've listened to, like every day the past 15 years, or the TV shows they've watched.
Well, that's true. But to kind of give you kind of my walk through all this is, I haven't cut the cable yet, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't know why I haven't, but I just haven't. But the reality of it is I jump on YouTube a lot. And when I jumped on YouTube a lot, it was like, why do I even do this? Because I'm watching the news, or I'm watching news clips, or I'm watching whatever kind of junk may be out there, that's just keeping me, on edge, if you will. But then I started getting more and more into these things like, hey, I can actually use this tool to actually better myself. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think you and I kind of connected, because I think you had probably been doing that much earlier on than I had. Mm-hmm. You mentioned Tony Robbins, you mentioned Napoleon Hill. I've read, Napoleon's book about Think, Grow Rich. So we kind of had a connection, something to talk about there. But at the same time, I started looking at those types of things because I, listened to Audible and, I listened to a lot of, nonfiction books and this and that and the other. But YouTube can be a very powerful tool. So moving off of cable and more onto YouTube, yeah, you're right. It's a habit, right? Because you're going to go to what you know, right? Yeah. But once you start thinking about like using this as a tool, not necessarily as just something that's in the background, then you start seeking out things that can help you in your day-to-day life. And I think that's where Shane and I are currently at, Mm-hmm. The videos, that I watch are more now related to financial success, mastering life, different biohacking techniques and stuff like that. And so I'm starting to benefit more just from a positively standpoint. So, I guess that's where the intentional comes in. Mm-hmm. Trying to create a, kind of a connection here. So, intentionally doing some of these things to create this positive outlook in your life. And, it's not just, turning one thing off and moving to the next. It's you're doing it for purpose. You're doing it for reason. It's like, what is that reason? So that's what, I think Shane and I kind of want to, just talk about our own journey, and, maybe you guys listening out there, can benefit from it, because there's lots of stuff we have to learn, and there's, lots of stuff that, we've done in the past where we've made mistakes and we've had to, correct. So So anyway, sorry to jump in on that, Shane. But,
No, absolutely.
Just wanted to kind of create that parallel there.
But yeah, well, I mean, you were talking about, so how do you do that, and how do you be intentional? Like, for me, I've always been motivated by, like, there's got to be a why. Like, I have to have a sufficient reason for doing something. And once I don't know, there's some kind of threshold in my mind. Once I get to the point of that threshold being met, I can go cold turkey on anything I used to do before. Like, for example, and I don't know how I got to this point, but so a little bit of my background. I mean, I'm doing quotes here, folks. I was a rock guitar guy, right? Like, since I was 12, like, I was obsessed. I started with Metallica, and then got into Pantera, and then started taking it very seriously when I was 18. I studied at the Atlanta Institute of Music's guitar program and taught professionally at the School of Rock, some places in Denver, in Atlanta, Indianapolis, just kind of all over. And so anyway, fast forward like to this past year lately, one of my primary interests has been like the subconscious mind. Again, with listening to all these kind of like biohacking videos and just understanding, how do humans behave, and why do people do what they do? You started realizing like that, if I guess here's like kind of where my threshold was. I really believed, after kind of making up the decision myself, that that this is something true. This is something I believe in. That if the quality of your life is essentially an unmerciful mirror of the quality of your thoughts, then it's crucial that you just take complete control over what goes in your brain, particularly partiecting what is it that's coming in through my senses, particularly my ears and my eyes. So I kind of was reevaluating all the music I used to listen to, and it's now like I'm like, oh my god, this is Satan, like I can't listen to it anymore. But I'm like, I would listen to the lyrics, and even just like the guitars and the music, and a lot of it's good, but some of it is just, even at a subconscious level, even if I'm not paying attention, my mind is hearing it, right? It's like, it's like if you've ever done like the newspaper test. If you ever like opened up a newspaper, your eyes see everything, right? But there's only so much information your brain can process. So what happens is, your subconscious mind processes everything that it's seeing, but since the conscious mind can only handle so much, there's certain words that kind of jump into our awareness, right? That that our mind, or our subconscious mind, sees as being words that will help us get to where we ultimately want to go at our deepest levels, or they'll find us words that relate to who we are as a person, or like what our constant habitual thinking is, things like that. So when it came to like music, for example, I started realizing that, hey, like there's a lot of the stuff I listen to that's just not good for me. I like the sound of it. I still like the sound, but it doesn't help me, right? So I was able to cut a lot of music out that I used to listen to like on a daily basis. I've listened to for years. The same thing happened even with the news. Like I don't know. I feel like my motivation for listening to news programs or news podcasts or YouTube videos, or like looking at like any kind of website, I just started realizing, man, like at the end of the day, this just makes me anxious. It makes me fearful. It makes me pissed off at other people. It makes me feel, like this false sense of superiority over these idiots that are doing this crap in the world. And it's just like that's not a good way to be thinking. And those thought seeds are not going to yield any kind of fruit that's good, either for myself or the people around me. So again, once I was convinced of how important the quality of your thoughts is, that it just kind of changed everything. I was aware of everything I was intentionally listening to or reading, and I've been doing this very, very intensely for probably the past 3 months now, and it's just completely changed my outlook on life. I handle people much more patiently now. I look forward to things like traffic, because like it's in that time of waiting, I can be spending my time, rather than thinking about how much people suck or how the world is going to hell and all, I can think about, hey, what's how can I train my mind? How can I start training myself to be someone who sees opportunity? How can I, even more than that, like, how can I be someone who just notices, like, the wealth all around me and the abundance all around me, like just noticing, like, the landscape people do on their houses, right? Like,
yeah, and that's really awesome, because that's something that we talked about the other day when we talked about doing this podcast. And it's like, that's one of the things that we, want to, try to start figuring out the format here of this podcast. We live in Atlanta. Traffic in Atlanta is just absolutely terrible. It takes me an hour to an hour and a half to get home sometimes and to get into work, depending on when I leave. So, how do we take that and we say, instead of it being a negative experience for me or you or whoever, how can we turn that into a positive experience, right? And so that's what Shane is saying, is that, from his perspective, he's looking around, he's looking at, these beautiful homes that he drives by, the beautiful landscaping, things that he can look at and appreciate that those individuals are capable of doing that, and then thinking and inspiring to how they have the money to do that. What are they doing? Trying to figure out those things, and also bringing that into his reality, right? Going home, landscaping his house, having quality time with his family, out planting flowers and this and that and the other. One of the ways that I solved that issue of it being negative years ago was, I jumped onto Audible. And so what I do now is I actually look forward to jumping in the car and driving back and forth to work, because that's where I listen to books, right? So a lot of the Tony Robbins stuff that we talked about, Napoleon Hill, that's how I got in, to reading those things and understanding those things, was that, I just started doing Audible and listening to Audible in the background and learning as I drove, right? So instead of listening to, the radio, and they're complaining about, I don't know, who got kicked off of Survivor, or what North Korea's doing, or all this like crap, you know what I'm saying? That's completely useless in our life, you know what I'm saying? Not, how do I use this time, to have more of a positive outcome on my life? And so, those are some of the kind of topics and kind of things that we want to do, and kind of dive in deep and kind of, explain, how we're solving, some of these problems in our life, and hopefully offer up, some kind of insight into, maybe how whoever's listening to this, can improve their life and lifestyle, and start looking at things from a much more positive outlook. So
sure. One of the things, from my perspective, I hope that people can get out of this as well is to help you guys realize. So I have currently 3 children, all of whom are under 4, and so like I can't wait to the point where I can eventually sleep more than 4 hours. And no, I'm kidding, but I it's just, life is insanely busy right now. I got full-time job. I teach part-time, 2 evenings a week, and then on Saturdays for like 6 hours. And so it's crazy. One of the things that people say, when it comes to, okay, yeah, I'm going to try to change my mentality. I'm going to try to incorporate these new practices. I'm going to learn how to meditate. I'm going to read a book each day. It's just like, but then you realize, I don't have time. There's no time to pray. There's no time to better myself. And hopefully what I can help bring to the table, among other things, is help you to see that, regardless of where you're at in your life, regardless of the things that you're constantly, that you're continually doing, the obligations you have to meet, there are ways and strategies of being able to better yourself and gain knowledge and acquire peace of mind and heart, and there's been things that have worked really well for me. I struggle in other areas, which I'll be happy to share as we continue to go along here. But yeah, I mean that's ultimately what Brad and I are trying to bring. It's just two dudes who have their own lives, who are trying to apply a lot of this information that we're accumulating in a lot of different ways, and we're excited to talk to you guys about different authors that we discover, different entrepreneurs, business owners, just people who are just high achievers in general. Hopefully what we can help you guys with is, as well as ourselves, is being people that are differentiated from the crowd, right? Like by being those who we have a direction our life is going in. We're people who we recognize that life happens for, not life happens to.
Right.
We can help you realize and help ourselves realize that you can yourself take life by the balls, and you can put your intentions out there. Like, this is the kind of person I idolize. This is the kind of person I want to be. Thus, this is the kind of person I am from now on. I'm not going to wait for some mystical occurrence to happen in the future that's magically going to turn me into this person. I'm just going to start being that. This is the goal, like I have for my life. It seems insane. It seems ridiculous, but I don't care. Screw it. Like, I'm not going to be limited by other people's understanding of the world. I'm only going to be motivated by my understanding of the world, and stay close to my creator and be true to myself. And so I mean, personally, I'm really excited about life right now. We hope you guys are too, and I'm really excited to share with you guys our experience, and hopefully in the future start hearing from you guys as well. So.
Yeah, and so same with me, going through the same sort of things as well. As we solve these problems, for ourselves, this is going to be a forum for us to talk about how we do that. And we're hoping that you guys will get a kick out of going down this journey with us, and not only from an entertainment value, but also from just an intriguing, interesting, can I apply this to my life perspective as well. Because, it all starts with a vision. It all starts with a goal. Shane and I, have different ways of how we apply those things. And so it's about talking those things out and understanding what works and going down this journey of seeing where we go, right? So anyway, I have no idea if this first episode made any sense to anybody. Just two dudes rambling is pretty much what it boils down to.
And that's pretty much what it will be from now on.
We probably will just post this, and we won't even listen to it, because if we did, we would probably be embarrassed of whatever we said or what we sound like. So, just bear with us as we kind of get the format down. Once we get some listeners and start getting some feedback from listeners, I think that's what Shane and I are most excited about, is to basically just, serve you as the listener, kind of talk about those things that we've learned, as, others have served us, and, how we can serve the community, as we, continue this journey called life. We'll figure it out in the future. I'm sure it'll probably take us, 5 or 10 episodes. But anyway, we are at the 30-minute mark, and we will see you guys next time.
Yeah, thanks for your attention.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.